Hello, welcome to today's episode of Kevinrude's Garage. Today we're going to be looking at this motor right here. This is a 1936 Johnson Model 300, a 3.7 horsepower engine. Let's give you a quick tour of the motor and then we'll explain what it is we're working on. As you can probably tell by the lack of a lower unit on there right now, we're probably going to be working on the lower unit. But let's take a look at the whole motor and then we'll get into that. So first thing you see on the plate here, this motor was made by Johnson Motors of Canada from Peterborough. That was their headquarters in Canada back in the day. It was Peterborough, Ontario. You can tell it's a Model 300 right here, model number 300. And then if you look up that serial number in the Johnson manuals, 25132, that'll date it to 1936. One of the more attractive features of this motor is this bright red cover plate here. Kind of a cool looking thing. That's all original paint on there. Interesting thing is that right behind that plate, or this whole unit right in here, this whole front bracket, the carburetor is cast integrally into that, which kind of made cleaning the carb, which I've already done, kind of made cleaning the carb a little difficult. You can't just submerge it in a bucket of carb cleaner, such as this bucket that I have right here. You've actually got to clean it with spray carburetor products, because that carb cleaner in that bucket I just showed you, that'll take that paint right off of there and kind of ruin that, ruin the good looks of it. Another thing on this motor that was kind of cool, I just picked it up this winter of 16-17, but a lot of times one or both of these transom screws here will have one or both of those ears broken off, and both of these ears were fully intact. So that was kind of cool. Got some old spark plugs on there, some old spark plug wires. The decal on the back is almost gone. Not surprising for a motor of this vintage. It is 80 plus years old at this point. I'll have to check some pictures, but kind of in around this muffler exhaust area, I'm pretty sure there's something missing here. I'm not entirely sure what, but there is something missing there that I'll have to figure out. Another interesting thing about these motors is these brackets here that keep the leg fastened to the motor. And again, you'll notice I got the lower unit off. The reason I have the lower unit off, when I started the motor, it started up great, even on those nasty old plugs. I think it started on the second pull. And I have no history with the motor, so I don't know when the last time it started was, but it started on the second pull. The ignition system on these Johnsons of this era are virtually indestructible. I mean, you can take those coils out, play baseball with them for an afternoon, put them back in, they'll be just fine. Just noticing, if you ever pick up one of these, there's serial number listed right there as well. You'll notice that it matches the same serial number as we have on the top here. Looks like it's 25182, not 132, as I see a better stamping over there. Anyway, still in 1936. So anyway, yeah, the motor started up great, but was not pumping a lot of water. And I kind of wanted to show what's going on there. That's why we've got this thing apart. See where that water's coming out there? That's your, that's the water outlet. If you're not familiar with outboard motors, almost all of them are water cooled. And what that means is they'll pump water up from the lake, run it around the cylinders, around the outside of the cylinders to keep them cool, and then spit the water back out as you saw coming out here. So I got the lower unit off that would scoop up the water, but from the part that's still on here, the water would come in this inlet here, run up around the cylinders as I pointed out there, and then come out where we saw the water there. So like I said, I wasn't getting any water through it, so I'm trying to figure out why. So one thing we're going to look at is what's going on with this part of the cooling system. Make sure it's up to snuff, and if it is, then we'll go check out the lower unit that I've already removed and see if there's any problems there. So what I've done for this is I just got this thing, which, you know, kind of looks like a turkey baster, but is, I think it's actually some kind of battery refiller is what they called it at the auto parts store, but it's basically the same idea as a turkey baster. So we're just gonna squirt some water in the outlet here, see if it comes through out to here, which would be the inlet, and that'll tell us, you know, whether or not there's any obstructions in this area. So there, just put some water in. All right, now maybe we'll blast it. And there you can see the water coming out the end there as I filled it with water, and I'm now shooting air through it. So that is, you know, that area there, now you can see the water coming out. That's nice and clear. There's no blockage in there, no dirt, no grime. The other thing that can happen with these is if you leave water in them over the winter, the copper tubing that's in there can actually collapse. The ice will force it to collapse, and then the water can't get through either. But as you can see here, it does not seem to be our problem in this case, as, you know, with a shot of air, we're able to squirt that water right out of there. So that tells me that the problem with the cooling system is not in here. The problem with the cooling system is in the lower unit. And we'll go take a look at that lower unit now and see if we can figure out what's going on there. Okay, welcome back. We're no longer in Kevinrude's garage. We're now in Kevinrude's Fortress of Solitude. Give you a quick tour of the Fortress of Solitude here. It's in an undisclosed location on the Kevinrude estate grounds. As you can see, we got a number of projects going on. We got 3 flambeaux sitting there looking mighty debonair. Got a Chris Craft Commander in various states of undress. What we got back there? Some kind of Mercury and some kind of Martin. What we got here on the table? Well, there's my Mercatronic ignition tester. There's an old lamp that I'm not sure what I'm doing with that. Well, I know, I'm going to take an old leg from a boat motor and maybe make a lamp out of it. There's the business end of a Clark troller. There's the rest of the Clark troller. That'll make a good video whenever I get around to doing that. There's your Commander gas tank. Spark plug wires. It's back there. Looks like a box of parts of some kind. So anyway, that's a quick look at the Fortress of Solitude. Back to the Johnson Model 300 lower unit. Here it is in all its glory. The one thing about these Johnson units of the day is they had to be airtight in order to work, in order to pump the water. And how the unit would work, you can see this screen right here. That would be the water inlet. It would come in there. There's a piston pump in here, and the piston pump would then pump the water up to the top, and this would hook up right here with a series of copper tubing to the to the part of the motor we saw earlier in the video, pump it around the cylinders, and then let it out. Interesting how this piston pump worked here. Let's see if we can give somewhat of a demonstration. As the propeller would turn, there's a there's an eccentric in here somewhere, and the eccentric would move the piston that's in here up and down, pushing the water, pulling the water in and pushing it up to the top. If you don't know what an eccentric is, it's just a circle with an axle in it. The only difference is instead of the axle being in the middle of the circle, it's off center. So then as it would roll, you'd imagine if this was a circle, as it would roll, because the axle was off center, you know, there'd be a low end and a high end, and so it would be rotating while going up and down at the same time, and as that up and down motion would move that piston up and down. So, you know, as the propeller turns, the eccentric turns, the piston inside pumps up and down, and and there's your water pump. So as I said, the system has to be airtight in order for it to work, and when I had a close look at this motor, had a real obvious problem as to why maybe it wasn't airtight, and that's because there was a hairline crack right along here that you can see. In all likelihood, what caused that, kind of see a little scrape along the back here, but it looks like the crack is just on this side. In all likelihood, what caused that is sometime in the 80-year history of the boat motor, somebody put it away during the winter with water still in it. Water froze, and that cracked the lower unit here. As mentioned, the motor is from Canada. One thing we know about Canada is they get winter. So it only took one winter out of the 80 years to develop a crack when you put it away with water still in it. So what I did to repair that, I could have welded it, but I actually had a welder friend of mine point me to this product, not necessarily for this fix, but just in general. This product here, you can see, is called, I can stop knocking it down, it's called Rapid Fix. See if we can get the camera to focus on it. Camera doesn't know what I'm trying to look at here. Anyway, it's called Rapid Fix. One of these tubes is a powder. One of the tubes is a liquid. You squirt the powder on the area you want filled in, the hole or the crack, and then you come by later on and you squirt the liquid on top, and that seals it. Not sure why my camera's focusing here, or not focusing rather. Oh, there we go. You see it's called Rapid Fix. And so yeah, you just squirt the powder on, then squirt the adhesive on. Seems to have done a decent job. Maybe we'll go pour some water in there and see if that'll help, or see if it's actually sealed up. I did that a couple of weeks ago. The other thing you can do to help seal it is redo your gaskets. See, there was a gasket that sat right on there. Here it is. So I'm gonna that's the old one. It's pretty brittle, pretty nasty. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut a new one and put it on there, see if that'll help seal. I've already replaced a bunch of the other gaskets. These two here were in the carburetor. This one here, you can see the busted up one here. But that's this gasket right there. I've already cut that in and put it in. Incidentally, that's why I like tracing these out. When you see a busted up one like that, a lot of times with these brittle old gaskets, you'll break them as you pull them apart. So I'll try and trace them so that, you know, once I throw that one out, if for some reason this one fails or didn't work out so good, I've got a copy of it right here, and I can go ahead and cut another one. And then, you know, with this sheet of paper here, you can just scan that into your computer and it's saved forever, and you can print it off if you ever need it again. So that was another thing we did for trying to seal or to get this thing airtight. The other thing I subsequently read about with respect to this pump is, one, a lot of times the grease from the lower unit can get into this piston here, and that will affect how it operates. So I'm going to have to pull that apart and make sure that didn't happen. I read about that kind of after I put it back together. So we'll make sure there's no grease in there. The other thing is there's 2 ball valves in there, and I honestly can't remember if I have both the ball valves or not. So I'm going to pull that apart and make sure they're both in there. It's one of the problems with trying to fix a boat motor that you don't have a manual or a diagram with, is if a part's missing, you don't really know if it's missing. So I'm going to make sure I got both ball valves in there, and we'll see. We'll see how that looks. The other thing I didn't know before putting this back together, when I pull out the piston, I'll show you, but the bottom of the piston is curved like this, and it's supposed to be flat. And the reason it's curved like that is because it's just worn out on that eccentric I was talking about earlier. And somebody told me I can just go ahead and grind that flat again. And that'll help with the operation of the pump as well. So that could be another reason why the water's not pumping good. So between sealing this crack, between putting on the new gasket, between making sure I got 2 ball valves, between making sure there's no grease in there, and between filing down the piston, and also with knowing that the upper part of the cooling system is clear from earlier on in the video, hopefully the combination of all those things means this thing's going to pump water once we put it back together again. So let me start getting this thing apart, and we'll see how it goes. Just wanted to make a couple of quick points about gaskets before we get too much further. Couple of useful products here if you're going to make gaskets. One is a punch. I think I just got this one for like $10 at Harbor Freight or something, but as you can see, it's got different sized punches on there, and where that comes in handy is obviously when you got to punch out these little holes like this or little holes like that. It's going to be a lot easier with a punch than to try and cut that out with a knife, so that's handy. Also picked this up at my local auto parts store. We got a O'Reilly Auto Parts here where I live, so, but I'm sure you can get this just about anywhere. But it's Permatex Aviation Form a Gasket Sealant Liquid. And I've got that. You can see a little bit of it. I'm not the neatest gasket performer in the world. But you can see I got a little bit on that gasket that I put together there. So just a couple handy things to keep in mind when you're doing it. This stuff here, as you can probably tell just by looking at the overspill, again, I'm not the neatest gasket person in the world. It's kind of got the consistency and look of molasses. But it's a non-hardening type of gasket sealer. And then when it comes to cutting the gaskets out, again, another Harbor Freight special here. I think I picked up this X-Acto knife set for $20 maybe. You know, not real expensive. And look at all the attachments you get on there. I mean, that's going to last me the rest of my life in all likelihood. So, good little investment. And then just picked up a breadboard to do my cutting on, so I have a fairly flat surface when it comes time to gasket cutting. And then the other thing I kind of got lucky with is this table right here. This is an old school science table. You can see it's probably 4.5, 5 feet long. Solid, sturdy table, but it's got this, I don't know if that's slate, but it's some kind of covering on top of the wood, and you can even do some cutting on there. Now, obviously, this thing's probably 40, 50 years old, and, you know, it's got 50 years of science experiments on it, so it doesn't have too many flat surfaces, but still, you get your hands on a table like that is pretty handy. So there's that. All right, I guess what I'm going to do now is try and put some water inside here, again with my trusty turkey baster, which again, another Harbor Freight Oh no, this one I probably got from O'Reilly since it's an automotive thing, but that couldn't have been any more than $5. So I'm going to go ahead and squirt it in here. Try and plug up the... Okay, well, it's coming, the water's coming out the bottom there, which is fine because that's where the screen is supposed to be. There you can see where it's coming out is where the piston actually is located. Right in that opening, just by my thumb there, that's where it's coming out. That's where the piston is. But I'm just trying to make sure that this crack right here is sealed. I don't see any water coming out of there. Now, obviously, we don't have it under pressure or anything. But at least for what we can test right now, that's a pretty good sign. So we'll go from there and get started on some of those other repairs we were talking about.